On a rainy evening, I found myself alone in the garage, contemplating the recent instability that had plagued my family life. My wife, Jod, seemed to have shifted her priorities away from our children and home, focusing instead on her career and appearance. Suspicions of her involvement in an extramarital affair began to gnaw at me, and my fears were confirmed when I stumbled upon a rendezvous with a man named Felix Brooks at a hotel. Determined to uncover the truth, I embarked on a mission to gather evidence of her infidelity, torn between my lingering love for Jod and the betrayal I could not endure. Despite the emotional turmoil, I resolved to bring an end to our fractured marriage, no matter the cost. Thus began the saga of my struggle. Hailing from rural origins, I embodied the essence of a true country lad. Following my stint at junior college, I tied the knot with my high school sweetheart, Jody. Yet, Jod harbored aspirations of a more opulent lifestyle, immersing herself in society's glamour through magazines and yearning for luxury. To appease her desires, I secured a position at an upscale feed store in Omaha, catering to affluent clientele. This decision not only brought us closer to urban amenities, but also afforded me the opportunity to pursue my passions. Initially content with city life, I excelled in my role, providing exemplary service to customers while relishing flexible working hours. As Jod ventured into the workforce, our children found themselves in daycare, adapting seamlessly to their new routine. Meanwhile, Jod's career at a medical device company propelled her into a world of office glamour, distancing her further from our familial responsibilities. Shouldering the bulk of childcare duties, I watched our savings dwindle despite our dual incomes, perplexed by our deteriorating financial state. Attempts to address this with Jod were met with resistance, prompting me to safeguard our future aspirations through a separate savings account. With Jod's increased workload, secretive phone calls, and waning interest in our intimacy, the fractures in our relationship became more pronounced. Hints of Jod's desire for a flashy new car and talks of cosmetic procedures suggested a yearning beyond our marriage. Recognizing these signs, I concluded she was engaged in an extramarital affair. Despite my rustic background, I was not oblivious to the situation. My foremost goal was not to salvage the marriage, but to confront the issue and progress. Identifying the specifics proved challenging, given my unfamiliarity with her colleagues. Yet, intuition suggested the affair, if any, stemmed from her workplace. Thankfully, I had dependable coworkers, despite their lack of formal education. Maintaining fairness in my managerial role, I fostered a cohesive work environment where trust thrived. Chad and Daniel emerged as crucial allies in my quest. A recurring pattern emerged. Every Wednesday, Jod meticulously groomed herself for work. Leveraging this routine, I coordinated with my coworkers to cover my duties, allowing me to monitor her activities discreetly. My suspicions solidified when she rendezvoused with a stranger at the Holiday Inn. Heart-sinking, I recognized the gravity of the situation. Feeling a mix of disappointment and anxiety, I realized the need for a plan. However, in a moment of frustration, I impulsively sabotaged her car. Reflecting on this, I acknowledged my lapse in judgment fueled by anger. The day dragged on, filled with anticipation and anxiety. Upon her return, I casually inquired about her day, learning of a supposed flat tire incident, seemingly resolved by a colleague. We left the matter untouched. The following day, I investigated further, confirming my suspicions upon spotting Felix Brooks's red Lexus at her workplace. I gathered information about Felix through Chad's wife, who worked in the personnel department at Russell. Swiftly, I learned of Felix's marital status and his history of misconduct, which included inappropriate behavior towards coworkers and financial discrepancies. Armed with personal details about him, I grappled with how to use this information effectively. After a productive day's work with Chad and Daniel, I struggled to contain my simmering anger and sorrow beneath a composed facade. Jod's betrayal left me shattered, yearning for closure amidst unbearable torment. A stroke of luck came the following day when I recalled my rapport with Batty, the wife of Russell Medical's president. Though I hadn't met him, Batty and I shared a friendly relationship. Contemplating how to leverage this connection, I remained exceptionally polite during our interaction. During a conversation with Batty's daughter Karen, who was studying veterinary medicine, I found solace momentarily, despite the guilt of enjoying her company. Over the weekend, I worked on a project in the garage, crafting a tool for revenge using my welding skills. This tool, a small steel plate with attached concrete nails, served as my initial means of retaliation. Encountering Batty again on Tuesday, my subdued demeanor prompted her concern. Inviting me for coffee, she urged me to share my troubles. Sitting in her impeccably designed kitchen, reminiscent of Jod's tastes, I hesitated to burden her with my problems. Reluctantly, Betty assured me she needed more details to grasp the situation. As I began to share my concerns about Jod's potential involvement in a relationship at Russell Medical, Betty's expression turned to one of concern. Detailing my suspicions, I confessed how I caught Jod and the man, likely Felix Brooks, together at the Holiday Inn. Uncertain whether Jod was coerced or complicit, I bemoaned the strain on our family life and the secrecy surrounding the affair. Firmly, Betty inquired about the man's identity, prompting me to reveal what little I knew about Felix. Offering her assistance, Betty promised to discreetly investigate the matter, easing my worries about causing a scene. Grateful for her help, I thanked Betty before preparing to leave, inquiring about Karen's whereabouts. Suggesting a meeting between the boys and Karen, Betty offered a hopeful suggestion, leaving me with a glimmer of optimism. The following morning, amidst relentless rain, I observed silently as Jod prepared for a significant day, dropping the kids at daycare before heading to work. With my colleagues covering my duties, Chad and Daniel readied for their tasks, equipped with our modified steel plate. As Jod and Felix disappeared into the hotel room, I swiftly executed our plan. Piercing Felix's car with the modified jack, I sabotaged his engine and fuel tank, then discreetly damaged Jod's car before departing, satisfied with my actions. As I prepared to leave, I drove past Felix's compromised vehicle, casually flicking a lit cigarette out the window before speeding away. Glancing in the rearview mirror, I witnessed flames erupting from the car, followed by an explosion. Despite the chaos, a sense of relief washed over me. Joni arrived home from work later than usual, foregoing dinner and heading straight to bed. I spent quality time with the boys, assisting them with their evening routine before tucking them in. That night, I opted to sleep on the couch. The next morning, as I got the boys ready for daycare and we proceeded with our morning routine, Jody remained in bed, showing no signs of getting up or engaging in conversation. Her absence at the breakfast table went unaddressed, and as we departed for the day, I noticed her car was conspicuously absent from the driveway. Around 9 a.m., shortly after loading up the trucks, Lieutenant Jack Clark paid me a visit. Despite his friendly demeanor, his unexpected appearance piqued my attention. Inquiring about my schedule from the previous day, he seemed curious about my activities. I explained it was a typical day with routine deliveries, nothing unusual. Perplexed by his questioning, I wondered why he was probing. Clark then inquired about my whereabouts around noon. Retrieving the delivery logs, I laid them out for him, detailing each stop and corresponding time, as well as my initials. A faint smirk appeared on his face as he remarked on the meticulousness of my records. Offering to review logs for the past month, I was unsure where the conversation was headed. However, Clark declined, smiling as he disclosed the reason for his visit. He explained a vehicle was damaged at the Holiday Inn in East Oman the previous day, and they were investigating if anyone had knowledge of the incident. Sensing a connection to Jody's absence, I questioned why he approached me. Clark then revealed another vehicle nearby had 2 valve stems cut, coincidentally belonging to my wife's car. They were exploring potential correlations. His explanation left me with a mix of concern and uncertainty about Jody's involvement. Expressing confusion about why her car was at the Holiday Inn, Clark clarified it belonged to a colleague she had a lunch meeting with. They were meeting company clients at the hotel, and the incident occurred during their lunch. Hoping for clarity, I inquired if he had spoken to the people they dined with. Unfortunately, they couldn't recall their names, Clark replied. Shall we address this matter directly, or skirt around it? I queried, opting for transparency. Leaning back, Clark offered a slight smile. Do you happen to know a man named Felix Brooks? He inquired. I can assure you, I've never met him, I replied truthfully. I believe you, Clark nodded. I prefer not to meddle in personal affairs, and I hope not to return. Here's my card. If anything arises, feel free to reach out. Understood. We shook hands, and he expressed regret. I'm sorry for bringing this to your attention. If I can be of assistance, don't hesitate to ask. Thank you, though you haven't provided any new insights, I observed as he departed. Later that day, upon returning home with the kids, I noticed Jod's car in the driveway. She appeared casually dressed, with dinner ready. Despite mentioning feeling unwell and taking a sick day, she made no mention of the previous day's events. Opting not to broach the subject, I tended to the boys before settling on the couch for the night. The following day, as I dropped off the boys at daycare, Jod busied herself for work. Afterward, I visited the doctor's office for an STD check. The day proceeded like any other Friday. Upon returning home, I found Jod there again. During dinner, I casually mentioned plans to take the boys to a customer's farm the next day. Though I invited Jod, I expected her refusal, which she confirmed with talk of shopping. Regardless of her plans, the outcome remained unchanged. Saturday at Russell's Ranch with Karen and the boys proved delightful. Laughter, joy, and Batty's delicious lunch made the day special. Karen effortlessly bonded with the boys, reciprocating their affection. Despite Mr. Russell's absence, Batty made no reference to our prior conversation, and Karen seemed oblivious to any tension. Parting ways was bittersweet, but all good things must end. Returning home, Jod showed little interest in our day's adventures. Her indifference was palpable as the boys tried to share their excitement, only to be met with disinterest. Though she inquired about my sleeping arrangements, noticing my absence from bed, I offered a vague excuse about work-related sleep troubles, which seemed to satisfy her curiosity, ending the discussion. The ensuing week passed without notable events. On her birthday, I noted her lack of plans, suggesting our scheduled meeting had been canceled, suiting my need to catch up on work. I seized the opportunities to consult a divorce attorney who furnished me with informative materials and intriguing forms. Life resumed its semblance of normalcy until the following Wednesday, when Jod meticulously adhered to her morning routine, styling her hair, donning new black lingerie, spritzing on fresh fragrance, and even sporting new shoes. Concealing my curiosity, I swiftly departed with the boys for a planned outing. After dropping them off, I discreetly passed her workplace, noting a shiny new Mercedes SL in its parking spot. Hastily jotting down the license plate number, I returned to my duties. Though we suspected Jack Clark could see through our deception, my colleagues and I persisted in efficiently completing the morning deliveries and manipulating records. During our leisurely lunch break, Chad continued deliveries while Daniel procured hydrochloric acid. Opting to lunch with Jack Clark, I arrived with sandwiches and drinks, noticing his bemusement. Engaging in casual conversation, I subtly ensured his distraction, aware of the task Daniel executed in the hotel parking lot. Methodically applying acid to the Mercedes, Daniel ensured extensive damage to various components. Adding mothballs to the gas tank, he further sabotaged the vehicle. Completing the task in minutes, he discreetly tampered with Jody's car's valve stems before departing. Despite our prolonged conversation, Jack voiced suspicion. Calmly, I explained my desire for a solid alibi regarding Felix's car. As Jack inquired about the significance of the day, I humorously deflected, mentioning the pulled pork sandwich special. Swiftly, I arranged for Jod to pick up the boys, ensuring she was reachable at her extension. Chuckling to himself, Jack relaxed as we enjoyed our meal. The room fell into a momentary silence before Jack spoke again. Should I call Mr. Brooks and inquire about his car? Why the interest? I probed. Do you have his contact info handy? Jack persisted. Reluctantly, I provided both Mr. Brooks's cell number and the Holiday Inn room number, specifically room 125. Take your pick. Activating the speakerphone, Jack dialed the hotel number. After a few rings, Felix Brooks answered, sounding flustered. Who's this? Mr. Brooks asked. Detective Clark here. We're still investigating the vandalism to your car, Jack stated calmly. Mr. Brooks sounded taken aback. Why are you calling me? How'd you get this number? I'm with the police, Mr. Brooks. Have you gotten a new car? Jack inquired. Yes, I have. Why do you ask? Mr. Brooks replied, sounding wary. Just ensuring we don't see a repeat incident. Is the car with you? Jack pressed. Yes, parked in a lot, Mr. Brooks confirmed. Everything all right? I interjected. Let me check, Jack replied. As Felix muttered in the background, presumably peering out the window, we strained to hear. A few indistinct sounds followed by a low groan. He returned to the phone. Something seems off. I'll dress and check. I'll call back, he said hurriedly. All right. But Mr. Brooks, why aren't you dressed yet? I questioned. None of your business. I need to go, he snapped, hanging up abruptly. Jack looked at me with a satisfied grin. Satisfied? Absolutely. Anyway, back to work for me. Call if you need anything, all right? Maybe lunch next week? Hopefully not. This needs closure before someone gets hurt, Jack remarked solemnly. Returning to work, Chad organized logs meticulously while Daniel discreetly disposed of acid bottles. The evening at home held promise, Jod picking up the boys but retiring to bed without a word. The next day, Jack visited, detailing the car damage. Despite assurance of my innocence, Felix remained convinced. While Jack may have suspected my involvement, he lacked proof and, perhaps, didn't seek any. As for Joey's tires, I didn't ask, and no one offered. With Jod's silence, I resolved to end it. STD test negative, I readied divorce proceedings. Planning a weekend at Russell's ranch, we found Karen there, much to the children's joy. It felt like a family reunion, a warmth I'd long missed, echoed by the boys. Karen remained oblivious to the tension, a blessing in disguise. Batta's reassuring wink hinted at optimism before bidding farewell. An alluring job offer emerged, promising better pay, a higher role, and potential business ownership, albeit 100 miles away. A perfect prospect marred only by the distance from Karen. The ensuing Wednesday saw Jod donning her usual attire, signaling another rendezvous with her beau. While unsure of his car, the routine remained unchanged, compelling action for which I lacked a plan. Unexpectedly, Bad Russell arrived, beckoning me to her car. Silently, she drove us to the plant, leading to Mr. Russell's office. Coffee served, casual chatter ensued until curiosity nudged me to inquire further. Why the summons? I asked. Mr. Russell chuckled, disclosing readiness to finalize matters. Informed by Batty, internal investigations were underway. Embarrassment preemptively apologized for, Mr. Russell assured progress by day's end. Conversation shifted uneasily to Karen, my discretion faltering. A ringing phone broke the tension. Mr. Russell's demeanor shifted as he answered. We can proceed, he declared, revealing Felix and Jod's location and a curious tire tradition. Speakerphone engaged, Felix's hesitant response confirmed Mr. Russell's suspicions. Amidst muffled voices, Jod's presence acknowledged. Assured of her consent, Mr. Russell pivoted to speak with her directly. How may I assist you, sir? She inquired. Was Mr. Brooks coercive or threatening towards you? Mr. Russell queried. No, sir. He didn't threaten me, Jod affirmed. Good to hear. So, it was consensual without any intimidation, correct? Mr. Russell sought confirmation. Following a brief pause and discussions, Jod returned to the line. Yes, sir, it was consensual. Excellent. When you and Felix return to the plant, we'll have the statements ready for you to sign. Could you put Felix back on, please? Mr. Russell requested. Sir, how did you know my name? Jod asked. Don't worry about that, Jody. It's not relevant, Mr. Russell assured her. Once Felix was back on the line, Mr. Russell instructed him to return to the plant to sign the necessary documents in the legal department. After ending the call, Mr. Russell smiled. Felix, why don't you take Bob out for lunch and return in a couple of hours? By then, the legal team should be done, and we can all go back to our regular routines. During our enjoyable lunch, Mr. Russell advised me to contain my gratitude. Batty insisted on refraining from further discussion and made me promise not to disclose anything to Karen. It was a hopeful sign. I shared my excitement about the new job offer with Batty, who expressed happiness for both the boys and me. After lunch, we returned to the plant, where I obtained notarized copies of Felix and Jod's statements, affirming their consensual affair. The legal team assured me that this evidence would suffice for my lawyer to proceed with the divorce. Felix and Jod were promptly terminated, escorted off the premises, their belongings packed. Unfortunately, neither had transportation. Batty kindly lent me her car, assuring its return the following day. With the documents in hand, I visited the lawyer's office. Batty made multiple copies. One set was to be sent to Felix's wife at the bank. I closed our accounts, settled outstanding credit card balances, and promptly canceled them. Next, I arranged utility disconnection with gas, water, electric, and phone companies. By Friday afternoon, during a visit, I cheekily informed Jack Clark of my virtuous behavior, eliciting laughter. I informed the landlord of my departure and bid farewell to colleagues, receiving well wishes tinged with regret. Daniel joined me to the Russell Ranch with my truck, facilitating Batty's car return. As I prepared to pick up the boys, a sense of apprehension crept over me. Jody's absence caught my attention. Inside, tears streamed down her face as she sat on the couch, starkly different from her usual demeanor. 2 boxes of her belongings lay nearby. After attending to the boys, I stood beside her, offering the opportunity to express herself. "You just had to do it, didn't you?" "Had to disrupt everything," she sobbed. "Why couldn't you mind your own business? You had no right to interfere." Surprised by her self-centeredness, I realized she failed to see beyond her actions, oblivious to the impact on our family. Yet, amidst her outburst, I felt a sense of relief, knowing I wouldn't be tethered to her. I retreated to the shower, seeking solace in the familiar cascade of water. Later, as I tended to the boys, she retreated to the bedroom, closing the door behind her. The next day, I brought the boys to work, ensuring all was in order for Chad and Daniel to manage. We gathered boxes for the impending move. Passing the Holiday Inn, I noted Jody's absence, assuming her car had been repaired by now. Repairing the tires must have strained her shopping budget. Returning home, Jod was missing. We packed essentials, leaving the rest for her. Little did she know, utilities would be shut off soon. Filled with anger, I took the boys out, leaving her silently watching. We sought refuge in a motel for the night. The following morning, dropping the boys at daycare, I left Jessica cookies and party favors. It was their last day, and I wanted them to enjoy it. Jessica inquired about the previous week's events. I confessed, apologizing for involving her. Visiting my lawyer, everything was prepared. Custody was granted to me, with Jod having visitation rights. Our assets were divided evenly, with no spousal or child support. Handing over the papers to Jod felt like a final formality. Pulling up to the driveway, seeing her car, conflicting emotions surged. Knocking on the door felt surreal. Weariness marked her face as she offered a drink, emphasizing the growing divide between us. Handing her the papers, I observed her reaction as she held them, her gaze shifting between the documents and me. I couldn't discern whether her expression conveyed anger or sadness. Finally, she opened up, her tone tinged with resentment and regret. "He exuded the scent of aftershave, while you carried the fragrance of fertilizer. Adorned in numerous suits, he contrasted with your preference for jeans. Indulging in lobster and steaks, he stood in stark contrast to your love for ribs and burgers. Clad in a London fog overcoat, he differed from your Carhartt jacket. Driving a fancy car in contrast to your reliable truck, his manicured nails juxtaposed your perpetually dirty ones. With a prestigious career, he stood as a sharp contrast to your identity as a farm boy. Must I continue?" she countered. "I yearn for a life that you couldn't provide, Bob. I regret our marriage. I entered it for all the wrong reasons, viewing you as an escape from my parents' failings without looking beyond the immediate. It was foolish to expect you to fulfill my desires. While I love my children, I regret having them. It may sound terrible, but I lack maternal instinct. I hoped that finding someone to fulfill my dreams would bring contentment, yet it only deepened my dissatisfaction. I misled you. I failed as a mother. But I'm not sorry for pursuing my aspirations and seeking something better." "What about his wife? What about your husband? What about your children? What about your family?" I interjected. Her demeanor shifted abruptly. My question seemed to provoke anger, and any semblance of remorse vanished from her expression. I couldn't care less about any of that. It's my turn now. I yearn to embrace the life of my dreams, a life that doesn't quite align with the conventional image of a husband from a farm and 2 rambunctious kids. I've meticulously sorted through the paperwork, so I implore you to graciously step aside and permit me to forge ahead with my aspirations, she expressed with a touch of bitterness. Her words crystallized my resolve, rendering my decision clear-cut. Without uttering another word, I gracefully exited. When I collected my children, Jessica kindly extended her support, offering to make additional phone calls if necessary. Later on, I proactively reached out to utility companies, negotiating to postpone disconnections until month-end. Despite the complexities, a twinge of sympathy lingered within me for her. 3 months later, the divorce proceedings concluded seamlessly, devoid of complications, with Jod remaining silent throughout. According to the lawyer's updates, everything proceeded as planned. While my new job proved fulfilling, the missed opportunity to acquire the business and prime land was a setback. My boss revealed that it had been snagged by someone else with plans to turn it into a horse breeding farm. While my job remained secure, my dreams of owning a place of my own faced a temporary setback. Construction began near the feed store, sparking speculation among us about its purpose. Upon inquiry, we learned it was a veterinary clinic specializing in large animals. Initially dismissing it as wishful thinking, my interest was piqued. Miraculously, the entire building materialized in less than 60 days. The new owner was set to make an appearance on Saturday, prompting a lunchtime visit with my boys. Their excited shouts of Karen. Karen revealed the radiant figure of Karen, accompanied by Batty. Having pursued her veterinary degree, Karen now aspired to raise show horses while overseeing the large animal clinic. As she guided the boys through the facility, Batty and I caught up. Our lunch outing together became an opportunity for Karen to share her plans of building a new home on the property to be closer to her work. The journey home that evening brimmed with contagious joy, evident in the radiant smiles that adorned our faces. Fast forward 5 years, and Karen's passion for nurturing magnificent horses had blossomed into a thriving enterprise. Her clinic had earned a stellar reputation for its outstanding success. In the same time span, my entrepreneurial endeavors had expanded, proudly boasting 6 thriving feed stores. Our family had grown with the addition of 2 adorable baby sisters for the boys, becoming the cherished center of attention. Every weekend without fail, my mother-in-law Batty and Mr. Russell, whose first name remained a mystery to me, paid regular visits. Regrettably, Jod never took the initiative to connect with the boys. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel not to miss new videos.